I don't know where to start, but I'll just say that it's a bittersweet for me and for being a former player. Um, there's been no more influential person in my life as a basketball player, as a student athlete, than Coach Carnesecca. I met him when I was 18 on my recruiting visit here at St. John's, and I remember what he told me. He said, "Look, son, you know, if you can be successful here in New York City, you can be successful in anything you want to do in life beyond basketball. We're here to support you, and even though I'm not going to coach you, I'm here to support you beyond the court." And that stuck with me, and he's always been much more than a coach to me. He's been a father figure, a mentor, a life coach, always there to offer words of encouragement, and it's the funniest man I ever met. So he will be missed, but you can see the outpouring of love and respect today, and that just gives you an idea of what he meant to all of us.
How much of that conversation had to do with you coming to St. John's?
It was very pivotal. I mean, I was one of the few out-of-state players at that time coming from Virginia. I didn't know a lot about New York. I knew a lot about the Big East. I knew a lot about St. John's. But he made me feel like he was going to look out for me. And I told my dad, I said, "Dad, I want to come to St. John's, and I think Coach Carnesecca is, he was the biggest reason why I committed to St. John's."
Did you know much about him before?
I knew about him, just the legend of him, right? And watching him as a coach on the sidelines and coaching great players like Mark and Chris and Walter. And I knew I was going to get a chance to play for Brian Mahoney, who was his longtime assistant. And so I knew I had a connection to him, but I didn't know what kind of man he was until I met him and sat down with him in person.
Tariq, what's it say about Coach as like the bridge of all the different eras of St. John's basketball, even the players and teams that he didn't coach?
I mean, that's the perfect word for him. He is the bridge. I mean, and he always gave credit to Coach Lapchick and those that came before him, but I mean, he taught us so much. He was the bridge beyond just basketball. He was the bridge in terms of how to conduct yourself as young men. We used to have pregame meals at Dante's right here at Union Turnpike. Roger, you remember Dante's. And it was just the camaraderie, the fellowship, knowing how to conduct yourself, how to treat people. All of that I consider bridges to life. So it's a very good metaphor to use that as a way to describe it.
He definitely was more than a coach to me. You know, he's more like a father figure to a lot of us around here. We looked up to him. He was like our leader. You know, he always made sure everybody was all right after they left school, whatever they were doing. So to me, we lost a great one.
As a coach, what do you think he was best at? What was the best sports-related advice you ever got?
Sports related, always play hard. Give it your all. Like Billy Shaver said, he always tell you give it your all. You fail, you fail. Just keep going.
It was just a great friendship, a mentor, somebody that was so good to us. Rick's talked about it a lot, but you know, in the early days of the Big East, he was always kind of the voice of reason. Kept us from getting too full of ourselves, and he was just, you know, I was lucky playing against St. John's at Fordham, and I was an assistant and just knew him for so long, and he was somebody that was always there with advice, and not X and O advice. I mean, he'd give you that if you wanted it, but it was just how to handle yourself as a coach, and that was probably the best thing that, you know, when you sat, especially when you sat on the other bench against him, when you think back of that, he just made you feel good about the profession. You know, everybody would call him Coach Carnesecca, and then later on, when we got friendly, Billy Schaefer had a great line today. He called about his colorful vocabulary, which was great. Usually it was toward the referees, but at our spring meetings, it was sometimes there, and it was just he made you feel good about being a basketball coach, and he taught, you know, so many of us, and he and Mary and Enos they were family. They were just really good friends, and it was one of the best things about being in the metropolitan area. And you'd look forward to the writers' luncheons at Mama Leone's, and just spending time with him. I hadn't seen him in 1 year. Talked to him on the phone, and he was great. He was still on top of things, wanted to know how the kids were doing, and you know, that was Louie. And when you think back, the Big East, I think Father Shanley said it, but I mean, the Big East would never have been the Big East without Louis, and I can't think of St. John's without thinking of Louis. I told Molly last night at the wake, I said, it's going to hurt me, but I'm going to wear a red tie today because it's St. John's and it's Louis, and that's what you should do.
Appreciate it very much.
How did he influence you as a coach in the college game?
How to behave. What separated Louis from a lot of coaches, there's a lot of people in our profession who are really gracious winners. Like when they beat you, they have nice things to say about you, but they don't handle the losing as well. Louis and John in particular, John Thompson, of our Big East guys, they were ones that were just as gracious and just as kind. If you were lucky enough to beat them, it was never about the officials or a bad call or somebody made a lucky shot or something like that. He'd just congratulate you. You do things the right way. So he taught you how to handle the good things and the bad things. And not all of us in the profession have always done that really well.
Tell a little bit about his personality. I think we all know the stats and the W's and all the wins and the accolades.
He was the best. He was happy. I'd love to, even if whether you're recruiting, whatever you were doing, whether it was a Big East function, a Metropolitan Writers Luncheon, a meeting in the summer, just if he was there, you knew you were going to have a good time, you'd have good conversation, and it was great. And it was, at times there was a little bit of back and forth, and it was good. Most of the language we couldn't, can't talk about now, but it was fun. He was always fun to be with, and those of us that were lucky enough to spend a lot of time with him certainly are going to miss him.
Thank you.
It's just the experience we had when we were here playing, and some of the things he instilled in me as a man. Forget about basketball, it's about Blue Day today. And he did a lot for a lot of people. It's been good. And he was one of the greatest persons I've known. I don't want to break down, but this is a hard day for everybody, but Coach was my guy, man. He helped me in ways that nobody else couldn't.
Tell me a little bit about just more than basketball, what Lou meant to you and the team and the guys that weren't even basketball players.
Lou loved all his guys. He was like a father figure to a lot of the guys that played at St. John's, and that made the difference. When you got a father figure, because I didn't have a father, so Lou kind of stepped in and became like a father figure to me.
Walter, we saw a very charming side of Coach Carnesecca whenever he talked to us. What was he like when he was away from the campus?
When he was away from the campus, he always talked about basketball. He was a lover of this game, and everything he did for the game showed, and everybody knew what kind of man he was, and that's why he had this great big turnout today when we lost him. But I tell everybody, he's going to heaven, and he's still going to be in our lives.
Walter, what does it mean for Coach, loving St. John's as much as he did, kind of still being around the program even when players or people weren't around that he didn't coach?
I think you see all of these guys are here that he didn't coach. They still came out for him because they knew St. John's was Lou Carnesecca.
Tell me a little bit about his style. He seemed like he was a stylish guy. People say charismatic. Kids call it Riz nowadays. Tell me a little bit about his style.
Very stylish, very unorthodox with his style. It was a little bit different, but he loved the crowd, and the crowd loved him. The fans loved him. Everybody loved him. But his style was just unorthodox, and he had something no other coach had. He was probably my best coach I've had since I've been playing basketball.
For me, New York City. I'm from Queensbridge Projects, Long Island City. Home of a lot of incredible people. And as a kid, starting basketball in 1988 when I first started playing. And then, in the 90s, you start hearing about St. John's and Coach Carnesecca, and go from LaSalle Academy, which is my tie I'm wearing today, and then get inspired to go to St. John's, and you hear about the Final Four teams. Just that young kid playing on the concretes around New York City and being inspired to come to St. John's. And for me, Lou Carnesecca, he symbolizes New York City, and obviously St. John's.
there are a lot of people who are here who, you know, former St. John's players, but who didn't necessarily play for Coach Carnesecca. Can you explain what the connection was between Carnesecca and the players who came even after he retired?
Yeah, you know, in making that decision to come to St. John's, we just wanted to meet him as a 17-year-old kid, straight out of Queensbridge Projects. You know, you want to shake his hand. You know, and I came in with Fran Fraschilla. Second year was Mike Jarvis, and looking out the practice doors, you would hope to see him come in. You would hear that he has an office here sometimes. I'm 45 years old now, but you know, back then that was huge. And then sometimes he'll come in, and you see his name all over. You see the pictures, you see the Final Four teams, and, you know. So it's just, as a 17-year-old kid, we kind of idolized that.
I was intimidated because I was playing against Chris Mull. But I remember Coach sitting there, and his presence in the gym, it's almost like a spotlight was just on him. Any room or gym he walked into, any sideline he captained, it was the bright lights, and you could tell he had something special about him. And from that moment on, I wanted to be a member of the St. John's basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Coach spent his whole life here, right? So that alone, just the longevity alone, but it was more his infectious personality, his warmth, his care, his love, his protection. You know, I always felt like he protected us. Billy Schaefer said it perfectly, where he gave his players the wins and he took the losses, and he burdened the losses for us, and he gave us the wins, let us celebrate the wins. So with that, you know, he just treated everyone with respect. You know, I watched him since I've known him for over 50 years. I met him when I was 11 years old. So just looking back, he was always gracious, very humble. You know, he won with class and lost with grace. And he had my favorite thing. He had a great sense of humor. He always made me laugh. I saw him a month ago. He was cracking. Like, if he saw me today, he would be cracking on my sneakers, making fun of me after I was going clamming or something. So, always had you know, even when he had to be, you know, with discipline, he obviously had to be very serious, but always, you know, that it was going to be okay. You know, I had my share of challenges. He was always there for me, honest and direct, but also with care and love. So that's a unique way to live your life for almost 100 years. And he never changed. You know, Billy talked about stories of people over the years and decades. There's a lot of common denominators. It's humility, it's grace, it's class, and it's love and it's caring. And he did that every day, whether he knew you or not, no matter how long he knew you. So that was the great example. You know, we talk about, when coaches, we always think about, you know, maybe speeches and X's and O's and things like that, but Coach was beyond that because he lived it. All you had to do was watch him every day. You know, Mark talked about the first time he saw him. When I met Coach, I was 10 or 11 at his camp. He was more reserved, doing lectures, you know, teaching basketball, telling stories. When he recruited me, you know, again, very reserved. My first day of practice, I couldn't stop laughing. This guy's running around, jumping. I'm like, who is this guy? I didn't meet this guy. But, you know, he had that unique ability. Once whether it was practice or a game, he got into that mode. And once it was over, he was just a regular guy. So, talk about, you know, bridging the gap, it was because of his consistency. He treated everyone with respect. And then, of course, when you're at a place for 50 years, that naturally happens. But not to underestimate, you know, his daily life. It's amazing. You know, very fundamental in his coaching, in his teachings. Very fundamental the way he lived. But when you do that every day consistently, that's extraordinary. That's what it becomes. You know, so never wanted the spotlight. Always, I thought Billy did a great job. Billy Schaefer did a great job capsulizing his life. I remember talking to him, it was about a month ago. I met his dad when I was probably a freshman, And he was talking about what Billy said, honest day's work. And we all know practice was so important. You're going to play the way you practice. So that was a big part of his teaching. One, don't have a big hat, right? Don't be conceited, you know. Peacock today, which was humility, but also treat everyone with respect, no matter if you're winning or losing. And then share your knowledge, share your experience, you know, share your money if you can. Pick up the check once in a while. Don't have short arms. But those three things are very fundamental. But that's how he coached and that's how he lived. And when you do that, when you stick to the fundamentals, you win. And he was the ultimate winner. That's why there's so many people from all walks of life, every decade, because he gave people love and respect, and people love and respected him. And that's the ultimate way you live your life.
These two guys grew up with it. I'm the foreigner here. But it was when you come to New York, playing at the Garden of Mecca. The stories that I heard when I went to Blue High, just about the parks in New York, going to play, and then actually going down to the parks, thinking I could play, and got taught many lessons out there. It's his name, Coach Carnesecca's name, is part of the legacy. He got kids in off the street from the city to come and play here, and molded them into men, and taught us life lessons. Made us better basketball players, but made us better people and better men in our lives.
Well, it happened to me. The reason why I signed to St. John's was because I wanted to be part of the history that St. John's was building, not just in college, but being in New York City. Everybody know who Lou Carnesecca was, and for me playing at Rice High School at that time and knowing how much the school was actually providing to so many young athletes, not just the opportunity for a good education, but also the opportunity to go to the pros. That's when we had like Chris coming back and Mark and Malik Sealy, rest in peace as well. So for me, I wanted a piece of that, and I think that was what Lou Carnesecca brand gave to St. John's University and to New York City basketball.
So tell me about Lou, during practice, off the court. I think everybody knows about the stats in the Final Four and the Big East. He seemed like one of those characters, one of those New York guys you would love to play for.
The funny thing was that, he knows, even though he's dead, that I'm mad at him because when I signed, that's when he retired. So I ended up, not having the opportunity to play with Lou, even though I had a brief moment playing at a All-Star game, a college All-Star. We went to Greece and he was the coach. And, I think that I was able to understand why so many great players played for him. He knew how to manage ego. He knew how to take great players and make them even greater, but also humbling himself. And I appreciated having the opportunity to have Louis around. He was a great human being. I think we had lost truly an angel on earth. Even at his age, he was still calling me once in a while. And I was like, Lou Carnesecca calling me. It was amazing. So that was the type of human being that he was, someone that really cared about his players, his family, his community, his college, his city, and obviously he built such a great legacy in basketball.
How disappointing was it to have him retire and not be able to play?
I was mad. Like I said, I was really mad because I really wanted it. I needed it. That type of leadership, that type of coaching, but it's still, I think that he provided that to so many great guys, and the reason why St. John's at that time we were the fourth winningest university in the nation, it was because he was doing something right for everyone.
Well, I just think the coach, the thing that he really taught us most of all was really, he led by his example, and he was a very humble man, he was a very giving man, and he gave everybody the same time, whether you were from a big network, a small network, a big newspaper, a small newspaper. He was very good with everybody, and that was a great lesson to learn. He never big dealed with anybody,
Yeah. And what about his career and his legacy on the court? How do you think that's affected the community and St. John's as a whole?
Well, he's such a part of the fabric of New York. Don't forget, he followed a legend in Joe Lapchick and became bigger than that legend. And when you think about it in sports, how many times can you remember when a legend follows a legend like that? So, that kind of speaks for itself.
And New York as a whole, he's a consummate New Yorker.
and just a class act. I mean,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he loved New York. He loved Madison Square Garden. He loved the big show, and he was a New Yorker through and through for sure.
He had a lot of like funny sayings, like he obviously they referenced peacock today, feather duster tomorrow.
Right.
He used to say that playing at the Garden was like playing in Macy's window.
Right.
Do you have some favorite Louisms?
One of the things he used to say was when you played at home, he'd say a hungry cat fights hardest in his own backyard. Like he'd say things like that. But peacock today, feather duster tomorrow is kind of the one. But he had a million sayings and funny things. Louis had a great sense of humor. The sad thing for me is he's a connection to my father. He's like one of the last connections. Him and my father were close. So, because I've known Louis since I'm 12, so it's a little bit of a different relationship as a player and everything. I've been going to St. John's games since 1964. So I was lucky to have known him even longer and in a different way.